Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm Tom Shellcross, licensed agent with Second City Real Estate. With me, as always, is Mark Ainley, founder and owner of GC Realty. Mark, was that intro hot enough for you?
That was came in hot, man. Anyone listening, I was giving Tom a hard time. Like, I didn't think he was ready for the show today, man. He showed me up with that intro there. That was pretty. You came in hot for sure.
We're good to go here. What have you been up to? What's new in your world?
Man, I heard the funniest story today. Now, I'm not going to drop any names because people probably know him, but this is going to turn into the housing provider tip as well, too. But somebody in our space, he's a real estate investor. He had one of his tenants, it was a slip and fall, frivolous. He doesn't even know who the person is on the lawsuit. So it's a friend of a friend, you know how that works with tenants. And the process server couldn't find him. So on his LLC for his Illinois registration, it shows him as the contact, his office. He works remote a lot. He's not in the office. They couldn't find him. But he was at a networking group. He was actually going to present, and the process server found him online. So whoever's doing the marketing for this group did a good job. But the process server found him online and showed up and served him before he went on to speak at this group. And I don't know, that's just the craziest process server story I've ever heard.
Man, showing up, I've heard showing up at the place of work, but showing up at a networking event, that's pretty good.
No, that's good. Like that process server, like I'd like to hire him to like serve predictions. Like that was my second thought. I was like, man, I got to find who this guy that served him. Like that guy's pretty sharp.
So is that the housing provider tip of the week? Thinking outside the box, Googling where these people are going to be.
Well, no, actually the housing provider tip of the week was going to be different. If you are an LLC, whether you're a landlord or you're a property manager, and you have an LLC, when you fill out your paperwork, you have the space on the bottom that's your registered agent. So you get set up when you first create your LLC, or every year when you do your annual report, that's your chance to change that. But your registered agent should be your attorney or somebody that they can serve. So in this scenario, if they couldn't find him because he wasn't in his office, they wouldn't go track him down there. They would just went to his attorney's office who they could serve the attorney, and the attorney can give you that bad news. So make sure you have someone else other than yourself on there as a registered agent. And it should be just kind of your call it your corporate attorney or your go-to attorney that you work with.
Very good. And you can check out attorneys on our build your team page we got.
Yeah, that's awesome. Build Our Team page is up live and well right now, so check it out.
All right, let's do this.
All right. So today's episode's a little different, and it's prompted for a couple of reasons. One, I was introduced to this product that this team has here, but more so, I don't know about you, Tom, but I continue to hear investors say there's nothing out there. There's no product. There's no available properties. I want to buy something, but I don't have it. Or I just keep hearing all these sad reasons for why people can't continue to grow their investments or buy that second building or buy that fourth building or whatnot. And today we're going to talk about some of these different approaches that you could be being proactive with. And today we have Ben Smith and we have Kristen Lopez, both here from Rescover, which we'll talk more about Rescover later. But bringing them in here today, I just want to kind of get just a different spin on outbound marketing and the options that you have there as a real estate investor or part of your team that you can build. So without further ado, Ben and Kristen, welcome to the show. And before we get going, I need to know, what did you guys want to be when you grew up? When you're 12, what did the 12-year-old version want to be when they grew up?
Oh, I got this. I wanted to be an actress, so much so that I spoke in a British accent like nothing but for like 6 months straight. My parents would take me out to dinner, like we would go different places, and I would just be in character the entire time. And I wanted to be an actress when I was 12 years old.
I feel like you should have finished that in a British accent, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. Would you like for me to do the rest of the podcast?
Oh, man. That's
so
funny.
Where's you, Ben? What we got?
Mine is far less interesting. So I wanted to be a lawyer. And the reason I remember that is because when I was 12, I actually had to write a 7th grade paper on what I wanted to be when I grew up. And the reason I wanted to be a lawyer was because my grandfather was an Army JAG for his career, and certainly admired him a lot. So didn't go down that path. Law school did not interest me at all. So here I am in sales.
But man, both your guys' career paths, like to be an actress or be a lawyer, you both have like that salesy, out of character, different character thing. So you guys knew your 12-year-old version, you knew something about your future. So that's kind of interesting. Well, before going further, I didn't have too much of an introduction for you guys. Kind of, if you guys give each 30 seconds on how you guys ended up at this point in your career and what your experience is, and especially how it relates to outbound marketing.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, Ben. We'll cut each other off. Yes. So my name is Kristen, and I was actually redoing my bio a couple days ago, and I've been in the real estate game for about 10 years now. I started off as a dialer for a residential real estate team. So I did outbound calling for 8 hours a day, and that is how I started out, and kind of worked in all different sectors of the real estate game. So I've done commercial real estate on the tenant rep side. I have done wholesaling as well. I was a business development manager, sales for a property management company. I coached salespeople, and now I am selling again with Rescover. So that is my abridged version of how I got here. Lots of sales. Definitely love sales and love being back in sales, where I was at my previous role doing coaching. And that's how we met, Mark, through coaching. And so now I'm here at Rescover.
Yeah, full disclosure. Kristen helped me as one of my sales coaches when I had to get into sales and actually do sales. So thank you.
I was so intimidated by you, Mark. I just felt like I needed to say that. Like, I was thinking back today about our first call that we had, and I remembered being so nervous and telling one of my colleagues, like, I can't handle this. Like, I need you to be on the call. I can't do it. And then I was so nervous in that call, but we did it, Mark. And now we're here.
Well, thank you. Either that was a compliment or insult. I'm not sure. But
no, compliment for sure.
That's great.
I'll be honest, Mark, you don't make me nervous at all, but
I didn't know if she was thinking like, that guy's a dick. Like, I don't want to do
No. I was like, what do I have to teach this guy? Like, am I really going to be able to do it? That was my
you did. A coach guides. So you did your guiding. So, but give us the rundown.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in outside sales for about 12 years. I started my career in insurance. I got into the real estate industry working with another well-known vendor in the space for about 5 years. Was a sales rep, moved into a sales leadership role. And oddly enough, one of my former clients started Rescover, and kept in touch with him. And when the opportunity came to come over here, I was really excited about what he was doing. And so now I am a national sales director with Rescover, and Kristen and I are blazing the trail in this space. Thankfully, we know a lot of great folks like Mark and GC already, so we're not coming in too new. But
you guys have a podcast. What's the podcast too? It's all about sales.
Yeah, so we've got a podcast called Grow Outbound. You can find it on Spotify, YouTube. But talking about this very topic, right? The idea of outbound selling, going out and finding your prospects, and how do you do that, right? If you don't have a strategy now, how do you build one? Talking to property managers that are doing it well, talking to vendors that are doing it well, and just trying to give people good ideas on where to start, really.
Well, before we go any further, if you guys could one of you guys just break down inbound versus outbound as pertains to the real estate investor.
Go ahead, Kristen. I'll pass this one to you.
Absolutely. So whenever we're talking about inbound leads, that's more so a passive approach to whatever it is we're trying to do. So whenever we're talking about the real estate investor and we're talking about inbound, it's a little bit more, we're just waiting to see what happens, right? We are being passive. We're seeing something pop up on the MLS. We're looking on Zillow. We're looking for the active listings. Whenever we talk about outbound, more so, we're taking a proactive approach. So it's that proactive, maybe it's an off-market deal, or it is us going around driving for dollars. Whatever it is, outbound is proactive and inbound is reactive at the most basic level.
What, not many people do outbound. What do you, and Tom, you could chime in here as well too. What do you guys think as far as the holdup of people even going and doing the outbound or driving for dollars? Or maybe tell us more what driving for dollars means.
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, driving for dollars this takes me back to my wholesaling days where I was driving around trying to find properties to purchase. And that was exactly that. I would pick a block area. I live in San Antonio. So I would just know neighborhoods of like, I bet I could find some properties around here. And so just kind of driving around, finding addresses, taking notes, and then doing some type of research on who the owner is and doing outreach to that owner. So driving for dollars is exactly that. Drive around trying to find the dollars. And to answer that question of why do I think that people don't do outbound more often? Number one, it's scary to do because you're putting yourself out there. Like, that's the first thing. And number two, it's really hard. Well, I'm putting that in air quotes. The thought of it is really hard because where do you start? How do you get going? And what is going to be my process? If we don't have a process for it, then it's exponentially more difficult to do. I don't know, Tom, what would you add to that?
No, I think that's exactly right. It's one of the biggest pet peeves I have. Like, listen, like supply is low right now. It's tough. We all want to be buying more properties than we are, but it's also not impossible, and people are doing it, right? And like to sit there and I would have empathy if someone's like, hey, I just spent, I've made 5,000 calls. I haven't gotten anything. I've done this, that, and the other. Then I'd say, okay, like let's tweak that. But in like the first question I ask at a meetup is like, okay, have you done anything besides just looking on Zillow or Redfin? No. Okay, well, what do you think? Like, what? I can't remember who said one of the meetups. Someone was speaking. This is years ago. They said it's like going fishing and expecting the fish to jump in your boat. Right? It's not going to happen. Like you got to go out there. You got to be aggressive in many different avenues here. And it's surprising that so many people don't do it, I guess.
I agree with you, because I think that number one, it's just easier to sit back and wait for the properties to come on the market. But if I know specifically what kind of properties that I am looking for, and I know a condition that I'm looking to buy in, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find those deals. Like, you're not going to stop me from finding those deals. So it's like, how bad do you really want to grow your portfolio? And do you really know what you're looking for? Like, those are two very basic points to start there.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that. I think like, I would imagine most of your listeners have some sort of goal in mind of, a certain amount of deals that they want to do in a year, say. And, if you look at how many of those just kind of fall into your lap, right? Like the odds are is that probably doesn't get you to that goal, especially if it's an aggressive goal. And so I love the fishing analogy. That's one I use all the time, right? Like I imagine, all right, you're sitting out on a pier with one fishing line and you're just kind of sitting there waiting. And in the meantime, everybody else on the pier is doing the exact same thing, right? But if you were to get in a boat and go offshore, right, and you see these crazy fishing boats that have like 10 poles on them and they've got all the high-end equipment, right? You're out in the water, nobody's around you, right? Like people don't they don't put themselves out there as much when it comes to outbound. And so I think naturally, like you have less competition when you're out hunting rather than kind of sitting and waiting for it to come to you. So, but yeah, your why has to be really strong. Why am I doing this? Otherwise, it's hard to motivate yourself to pick up the phone. I mean, Kristen is one of the, let's say 10% of people out there that love making cold calls. But most people in sales, that's not their favorite thing to do because it involves rejection and it takes time to get results, right? So I think you're exactly right. Like if you want to get to where you want to be, you're gonna have to take a little bit of a leap and try something that not everybody else is trying.
I've had a little different mindset lately about my company, both on the investment side and then the property management side. It comes down to hard things. Like it's really easy, at least where I've gotten to just kind of keep yourself busy. It's really easy, and then maybe the investor, they could sit there and look at a bunch of properties that suck, that are naturally coming to them. But it's the hard work is actually, figuring out first off, the hard work is figuring out for me what the hard work is every day. Like, what's my hard work I got to accomplish today? But then for the real estate investor, it's actually going in and doing that. And I think a lot of people feel the outbound side or some of the things we're talking about today, the barrier of entry is like some sort of like magical, like you got to have certain access, or you got to build a team, or you got to hire 7 VAs that are going to make the calls. And I don't think it's that at all. I think it's just kind of getting up and figuring out some sort of strategy. What is like, what are some of the lower hanging fruit that people can start doing to kind of start tomorrow when it comes to like, maybe it's just mindset even for outbound versus inbound?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first you kind of have to get clear on what you're after, right? Like, what is your goal? What are you trying to do? How many folks are you trying to reach, and who's kind of your target, right? Do you have a niche of a certain type of property or a certain type of property owner that you want to prospect to? And then you kind of have to figure out like, all right, what are the best methods to get in front of this person? How much time do I have to do this, right? And really think through a strategy, because one of the things that's absolutely true about outbound is it takes consistency, right? Like, obviously you're going to have those home runs where you reach out to somebody on the first try and they just had some sort of crazy life circumstance where boom, you hit them at the exact perfect second, and they're going to reply to your email or mailer or give you a call, right? But the reality is that most of the time it's going to take several touches. And so I think before you even get started, you really want to get clear on who you're trying to talk to and what are the best ways to reach them. What is unique about your message that's going to appeal to someone versus, everybody else that, could potentially be reaching out, or just the noise of their day, right? I mean, like, we all get phone calls, we all get tons of emails, right? Like, how do you stand out from the noise and present something that is going to be unique enough to elicit a response?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. So there's two things that I want to tap on there. One, you've said it twice about kind of knowing your end in mind. So if your goal is to buy X amount of buildings in the next years, you almost got to back into it. Maybe we can talk about backing into it in a little bit. But the second part is there's a big range of what you can do, what you have to do there. I mean, there's these wholesalers that we all are familiar with that are literally spending $15,000, $20,000 a month doing exactly what we're talking about today. And then there's other people that literally want to only be in one neighborhood. And maybe, Tom, this might be you. You can maybe add to this, like, that you're going deep in that particular neighborhood and you're focusing. You might only spend a couple thousand, or you might only send a certain amount of flyers, but you're going exactly after what you want or where you want it to be.
Yeah, I'll chime in there. Yeah, absolutely. So I am not the best person for outbound, right? Like, I have fired numerous VAs for not being able to stay on top of this and put an actual system in place. But I will say what we do a good job of is my little neck of the woods. Like, I get deals from this. Like, this works. I don't depend on it. I'm not a wholesaler pumping out 15 grand, but it's one cog in the wheel, right? And you have broker relations, you have referrals, you have everything else. But, like, it's an important part of what we do. And, without it, like, I guess without it, I'd also just feel lazy. Right? Like, you just feel like, all right, there's this opportunity out here. Why am I not at least trying this? I want to turn it back over to our guest though, Mark, and have you chime in. Let's talk a little about, doing outbound. Here's something I struggle with, and, our whole who, not how methodology, right? Because is sitting down for 2 hours of my day and making phone calls the best use of my time with the other things that I have on my plate? And I go back and forth on this, like, is that an excuse for being lazy, or is that really a good idea? And no, you should be offsetting that to someone else. And this is something where if you ask me on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll give you 3 different answers.
That's a absolutely fantastic question, because I think that it comes down to what I always go back to is, what are your superpowers and where's your time best spent, right? If you absolutely hate cold calling, then you sitting down for 2 hours to make calls is absolutely not the best use of your time, because not only is it going to take that 2 hour block for you to cold call, it's going to take 2 hours leading up to that of your anxiety and your frustration of, like, oh my God, I have to do this. And then it's going to take you at least an hour afterwards to recover from, what did I just do? That wasn't good enough. And then all of the self-doubt's going to come in. So essentially you're going to waste an entire day doing that if that's not something that you like to do. So always making sure that your outbound method aligns with the things that you actually enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy doing it, it is not the best use of your time. Now, that may be like a very basic way to break it down, but that is what I have found to be the absolute best way to get through outbound. If you don't like doing it, it's not the right method for you. You may be at a different point in the outbound process to where you may be the idea person. You may be the face of it. You may be the one going to the networking events. You may be drumming up the business. And then you have to find that next person in line who does enjoy making the calls, who can get on the phone with an excited enough mentality to be able to take those on. So it all just goes back to what do you like to do? And I don't think that that's an excuse for laziness, because you just don't like it, right? Like, us forcing ourselves to do something that we don't like to do, that is not within our natural strengths, takes so much more out of us than for us to just find somebody else to do it who actually likes to do it. And that does go back to the who, not how, right? It's not me. I need a who. I don't need a how to grit my way through this. I need a who's going to step in and going to be able to take over this process so I can have the mental clarity to do something else and focus in a different space on outbound.
Yeah, I got the new book for you, Tom, Buy Your Time Back by Dan Martell. You got to check that one out. I referred it to a couple other people this week, but it's all about the same mindset of, like, hey, listen, is your best interest on a Tuesday morning to be calling 40 people, but maybe they narrow it down to the 6 people that are really hot, and you call those 6 people. It's not about outbound sales, but it's more about your time and growing your business and accomplishing what you want to accomplish based on having other people work with you.
Well, I think it also depends on your circumstance, right? Like if you're a newer investor and maybe you're not as well networked, right? You don't have as many connections. You're kind of just starting out. Like, guess what? You have loads of time, right? Like if you really want to make this a big piece of your life and you have big goals that you want to go after, right? Like you have plenty of time to go do it and try different methods and experiment. Like to me, that's one of the best parts of sales is like, it's this puzzle, right? And there's different facets to it. If you're building a business, like you want to obviously have people sending you deals like that's a great point to reach and an important place to get to. But early on, right? Like you've just got to figure it out. And like Kristen said, I mean, maybe you're really good at talking to people. Maybe the adrenaline rush of picking up the phone is going to fire you up, or maybe you're just really good in a certain area of crafting a message, something that's going to stand out and appeal to the person on the other end of the line or computer, right? Like, but I think the reality is like if you're stuck and you're not really sure what to do, inaction is about the worst thing you can do, right? Like not doing anything ultimately is going to yield nothing in return, right?
No decision, still a decision. But it keeps, this conversation reminds me of Victoria, if I say her name wrong, Barkate. She was episode 195. She literally stacked, she's a real estate investor we had on here. She bought her first property and she literally stacked her vacation time up so she could take 3-4 weeks off and dive deep into the outbound piece to find her next deal. Like there's different ways, if you are really busy, you can allocate your time or save for your time to do that. I feel like a lot of what we've talked about here is kind of fluffy. And if I was listening right now, I would kind of say like, what do I got to do to get started? What's kind of low end kind of hanging fruit? To me, driving for dollars, which basically means just kind of going up and down or walking or your neighborhood and finding that property that looks distressed or has the tall grass, or maybe someone in your neighborhood because the obituary has passed away and there's some sort of there. That's one part of the process, right? And it's then figuring out who owns that particular property is the next part, right? So you can literally get in the car after you're done listening to this and go find the property a couple blocks away that you actually already know is there, right? And now this motivated you to get off your butt and go do that. But once you find that address, it's like, what do you do now? And I know a lot of people do not understand really what skip tracing really means. Tell us kind of what skip tracing is and how that kind of works into this next step.
Yeah, so skip tracing is taking whatever information you have, whether that is an address or, I don't know, sometimes you can even have a phone number and then skip trace back to a name. But skip tracing is essentially finding the missing pieces of information. And so you take an address, and there's a number of skip tracing websites that you can find. Like literally, you can just Google skip tracing an address and it'll pull you up a ton of places that can skip trace for you. You plug in the information that you have, and then the computer algorithm dives into the deeper parts of the internet to pull back any matches that it has, names, phone numbers, email addresses, to be able to give you additional contact information for someone. So then you can go in and you can start that outreach. So at a basic level, that is skip tracing.
I'll take it even for those looking in Cook County here, like just some real simple ones. The Cook County property tax site will have the address where the tax bill is going and either the entity or the individual, right? This is very simple stuff here. If you're really saying, hey, I just need some real basic to get started, it's there. You know who to mail to. You can also look on Cyberdrive in Illinois if it's an LLC to find out, hey, that LLC is owned by Mark Ainley, right? So that's super easy. I could it's got a crazy link, but the recorder site will then have all the other information too, right? It'll have the mortgage on there. It'll let you know if there's other liens. It'll start to put the whole picture together for you. You say, oh, this guy's got a loan for 90% of the value. It doesn't matter. Like, I can't buy this at a discount. Like, he's maxed on his leverage here. There's nothing I can do. Or you can say, oh man, this is free and clear. Like, there's potential here. So like those are just two basic public sites before you even get into 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗁 and looking up phone numbers that are just, they're there, and it's public record, and it's right there for the taking.
And that's based on the information you pull from that. Right now, you have the choice to either mail them or call them. Tom, tell me about, like, I know you do Jefferson Park. You've been doing it for many years. Like, what's your strategy based on what information you get back from that?
So I like to look. So let's say that you're trying to buy like, you know, a 4-unit, 6-unit, 8-unit, 10-unit type building, right? Individuals is a little bit different, but when you're those, it's going to be an LLC. You can look up the LLC. You can find out where it is. You can find out who the person is or people, right? It's owned by three individuals, however it's made up. Usually you can find them on LinkedIn. You can find out if they're full-time real estate people or they're, you know, they're a doctor, lawyer, and whatever, and this is their passive income, right? And you can find it through People Search is a free site that does 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗁, and that's probably 70% accurate. It's not perfect, but it'll get most of it done for you. And that'll have information. So it'll also, on the Cook County site, you can click on the name. So if you clicked on that LLC, it'll also show you what else they have, right? What other transaction has that LLC been involved in? So all of a sudden, you know, like, oh, you can go down that rabbit hole, like here's 4 or 5 other buildings. Now that's only an LLC match. That's not, if you typed in Tom Shellcross, it wouldn't work. It would only work with the LLC being exactly for the next one. But all these smaller buildings, that's the case, right? They have one LLC that owns 2 or 3 units. So I put that all together, and then, you know, I go after like the 100 names, right? Like I don't have this huge list. I don't have this huge mailing list, but these people we go after. You know, some people still have the management signs out there. It's right there for you. If you ever walk by a management sign or a for rent sign, like you are obligatorily, that's not a real word, but like if you're a true investor, like you are taking a picture of that and reaching out, like and texting them at that moment or later in the day. Like that's your responsibility.
Was that a version of obligated you were just trying to say?
Yeah, like, you know,
okay.
People say like, this is the obligatory pitch. Like I couldn't feel, and the word was just obligated.
Well, Kristen or Ben, like what is the, you know, what's like the best practices around, like once you find some information, like what do you guys recommend, or how aggressive do you get, or what do you guys recommend?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a different style, right? But I think whatever you're doing, like it needs to be a couple different approaches, right? So one of the things that I've done in the past is, you know, essentially built out sequences, right? And, you know, you can do this within a CRM or without a CRM, but essentially, you know, making a phone call, following up with an email, sending a text message, following up with an email, right? Like doing something that is layered with different communication methods, I think is really important, and has multiple touches, right? Like we talk to folks who will say, yeah, well, you know, direct mail doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me more about that. Well, I sent out 1,000 mailers and I didn't get any responses. Okay, well, how many times did you send out that mailer? It's like, oh, one time? Okay, well, then there you go, right? Like there needs to be some consistency and follow-up. You know, there used to be a stat that floated around on LinkedIn all the time that said, you know, on average, it takes 7 to 10 times of reaching out to someone to get a hold of them, right? And if you think about it, like if I was to get one cold call that I didn't answer, maybe they left me a voicemail, but they never followed up with me again, right? I'm not going to remember who that person was or what that company was or what they were trying to sell me, right? But if I got a phone call and then the next day I got an email and then the next week I got a phone call, right? Like it starts to build, and all of a sudden, even though I'm not engaging at this point, subconsciously I'm recognizing that phone number and I'm recognizing the name, right? And so, Tom, I love that you mentioned LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is another great tool that is really underutilized, right? Like it helps a lot to understand the person that you're reaching out to, right? And if they're an engineer, right, like that's going to tell you something about how they think about things versus, you know, maybe if they are full-time in real estate, right? Like the approach that you might take with that person is completely different. But most of all, I would say you really have to be thorough about follow-up. And that's like, to Tom's point, right? Like it's better to have a list of 100 that you're really detailed and consistent about reaching out to than a list of 1,000 that, you know, you're just kind of lobbing a dart in the air and hoping it lands on the board somewhere, right? A focused approach is way better than kind of that scattershot approach, I would say.
I 100% agree with that. The focused, targeted approach always wins out rather than a numbers game, because it's easy to think about it. If I have 1,000 people, then probably 10% are going to reach back out to me, and then I can win 10% of that business. And that brings us down to deals that we close. However, it's better to know the people. And I am a fan of sending gifts, like gifts, GIFTS, not gifts, GIFS, but like actually sending gifts out to people. And I would do that too, depending on what I'm looking to do, right? Gifts, personal mail, anything that is personalized to someone. I want to create a relationship with them. Relationship comes first, the sale comes second. And that's especially important in outbound, because if you call someone or you reach out to somebody the first time and your messaging is, "Hi, my name is Kristen and I would love to purchase your property," you're probably not going to get as good of a response as, "Hey, my name is Kristen," and you come up with something else that we're reaching out about, or some other way that we're creating a relationship. We're talking about, do you have any reason to sell this property? How can I find an angle? Especially this is for off-market properties. Nobody has shown any interest that they're actually looking to sell this. I have to create a relationship with you because you don't know me. You don't know anything about me. And just a phone call to you with all of the scammers and everything that's happening out in the world today, you have to create a relationship with somebody first. So that targeted approach helps with the relationship-led sales.
So what does the first 15 seconds of that call look like then? Can you give us a tangible example, right? Because like I agree with you 100%, but man, that's hard to do, right? Because you don't have a lot of time.
I think you could do something that's a little bit personalized. Hey, we work with a lot of folks in XYZ neighborhood, right? Like I've got a few properties in this area. I see that you're an investor. Just out of curiosity, like how's the asset been performing for you, right? Like something broad, open-ended, right? Try to get them talking a little bit. No, do not ask yes, no questions, right? Like that's the easiest way to feel very awkward when they just hit you back with a yes or a no. Oh, great. Glad to hear it. Hey, I know I'm kind of reaching out to you out of the blue, so I really don't want to take up too much of your time. Listen, I'm always looking for opportunities in this neighborhood. So if you happen to stumble across something that you think might be a good fit, or if you're, obviously you're in the neighborhood, I see that you've owned this property for, 20 years. If you're aware of anyone that's looking to sell in this market or this neighborhood, I'd love to talk to them. Do you know anyone like that? Right? Like you don't have to come in super hot and direct with, "Hey, are you looking to sell your property right now?" Like you sound like an infomercial, right? I think to Kristen's point, building that relationship a little bit really helps, right? And listen, maybe they give you a little something or maybe they don't, but building that connection, right? Like maybe if there is something that's on their mind, they just, something recently, some sort of circumstance came up where they've started to think about selling the property. You've got a much better chance of having an actual conversation than if you let off with, "Hello, I would like to buy your property, please."
What happens if, they just say, "I'm not interested," to hang up on you? Do you take that person off your list? Do you just send them a cute GIF of like getting the door slammed in your face? Like, how do you handle those on your 100-person perfect list? Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so I would. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna say, like, so for me, like, I'm not, in terms of my sales style, I'm not very aggressive. What I would do with that person is I would send them a follow-up email and just say, "Hey, listen, totally understand that you're not interested right now. I wanted to send you an email so you have my contact information. If something ever changes for you in the future, then I'd love to work with you," right? Because at that point, like, the likelihood of you flipping that person to in that 15-second conversation to all of a sudden being open to working with you is so small. But you could really mess it up, right? Like that person could, I don't know, like they could block your number, right? There's any number of things that they could do, and the odds of you ever talking to them again is so small, right? But if you're professional and courteous and, "Hey, listen, I totally get it. I called you out of the blue. It wasn't a good time. I understand all that. But at some point, if something changes, I'd love to have a conversation," right? Like you're leaving the door open for them. And maybe 6 months down the road, 3 months down the road, however you want to do it, you follow up again, right? I I still think follow-up is important, even if they're, expressing little to no interest in what in what you're calling about in that moment.
And I, on the other hand, am like, I feel like I'm a very aggressive salesperson. So when people tell me no, it gets me pumped up. Like, I am excited to call that person again. I'm going to wait maybe like 2 or so weeks, and I'm going to lead off that call with, hey, this is Kristen. I called you a couple weeks ago. It sounded like you were having a really bad day. Is today a better day? And I'm just going to start out exactly like that. And then for me, I don't know, I like to use my charm. It then becomes a game to me. If people are like rude the first time that I call them, it is now a game that I want that person to at least like me. I want that person to answer my phone call. So I'm going to give them some space in between the times that I call them, but I'm not going to take them off of my list until they like basically tell me to F off. When they tell me that, then I'm like, all right, I'll stop calling you. But if the first time they're just rude and they hang up, well, you haven't told me no, you're just having a really bad day, because most of the time that's what it boils down to is I may not have been the first person that called them that day. I may have been like the 8th person and they were really annoyed at something else. They have so much life going on outside of just my phone call that I'm not going to take that personally, and I'm going to give them a little bit of time, and then I'm going to call them again.
So Ben, you said something, you said, I'm not a sales, I don't like being very salesy. And I agree. I'm that way too. I do not like to, I just don't like to come off as salesy. And I think most of our listeners right now would probably agree. They're probably the same way. They're probably thinking like, oh, how do I do that? Because I'm not salesy. But I think the person that's not salesy has almost more of a genuine approach, or can bring out a genuine approach, which actually work to their benefit because they're not trained. So for those out there listening, like this, you could have almost a competitive advantage over someone that is a true expert in doing this on a day in, day out, almost because you don't know what you don't know, and it might just make you sound genuine.
Yeah. Well, what's the saying? People work with people that they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
Right? I mean that's the reality. And so being genuine, I think, does stand out from all the noise, right? And also being, taking a personalized approach, right? Like saying, hey, I live here in your city. I own properties in the neighborhood that you own properties, right? You're trying to create common ground with another person that 5 seconds ago had no idea who you were. They were completely unaware of anything you do. We just all have so much noise going on every day. Phone calls, emails, text messages, Instagram ads, LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads, right? There's always people competing for our attention. And so I think the way you stand out is to be a little bit creative, be genuine, make personal connections, right? Like that stuff still matters.
What about knocking on the door? You see that house, someone's living there, you just go knock on the door. Do you guys ever recommend that? Tom, have you ever done that? Like, that seems more my style.
Yeah, I think that absolutely works, right? Like, back to by knocking on someone's door and shaking their hand, right? Like you're humanizing it, right? Like you are person to person communicating, and so much of what we do now is electronic, right? Like, I think people still desire, human connection. Tom, if you got some stories, I would love to hear them. But I've done plenty of door knocking in the different industries that I've been in, and listen, with the reality is sometimes with certain people, like, in order to get to that trust level that you need to do business with them, they want to meet you face to face and talk to you face to face. And so I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I don't got any crazy stories. We do it once in a while. We do it with all the neighbors too, with any job we have going on. Like, it's hard to call 311 on me after, like, I've just said, hey, here I am, here's what we're doing. Like, I'm a real person with kids. Like, I'm taking that approach, but from a soliciting side, have not done the door knocking.
I have done a bit of door knocking. That was I liked calling people, and I also like just showing up at people's houses. So driving for dollars, I would just pick a street. Like, I would have a canvas map, and I would like actually print it out and pick like which blocks I was going to door knock on. And then I would just go up and down the streets. And then I would do a couple of blocks a day. It's San Antonio in the middle of the summer is whenever I did this. So it'd get really hot, and people would kind of feel bad for you at a certain point and be like, can I give you a bottle of water? Best opener ever. And for door knocking, if I was picking like multiple houses on the same street, The first one's always the hardest, but I would then ask that person, do you know your neighbor who lives 6 doors down? Like, I want to go there next. What's their name? And then I get their name. And then whenever I go to that next house, hey, I was just talking to your neighbor down the street, drop their name. They told me to come over here and have a conversation with you. So I'm already creating a bond with somebody based on a mutual connection that we have. So for me, door knocking, the first one's always the hardest because I have no connection with them, but then I'm going to figure out who they know down the street, and then I'm going to go to that house next. So it's a little bit chaotic whenever I do it because it's not ever just in a line. It is going from house to house depending on where I'm wanting to go and which houses I'm looking at.
So you take, kind of going back, you grab a list, you find a bunch of potentials, maybe build a list of 100, you have to follow up with them. Like, how do you track that all? Like, is that just a spreadsheet? Is it as easy as that? Is there free CRMs that you guys recommend? Like, talk about that.
There was one CRM that I used whenever I was wholesaling. I think it's called Podio.
Yep,
Podium.
I use Podio.
Podio. There we go. That is one that I've used. I don't know if it's free, but it seemed to be cost effective for my memory. So you could get onto something like that. HubSpot also has a free version of their CRM, but it can be as easy as a spreadsheet. If that is the first place that we're going, I mean, an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Doc spreadsheet of knowing which property you went to, what's the last conversation that you had with them, so you know where to pick up, taking notes on key points within those conversations, the dates you followed up. I mean, as much information as you can put into that is going to help you as you continue to follow up. So depending on where you're at in your process, you can get as sophisticated as a CRM. I also believe that if we have a dream list of like 25 or 50 properties that we're looking at, you could track most of that on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's really helpful from a kind of systematizing your process, right? Like tracking and organizationally, like to know, okay, when was the last time I reached out to this person? What did I say? When do I need to reach out to them again? But I also think like another important aspect of this that we haven't talked about yet is tracking your success. Because if you start to do it and see over time, okay, this method, even getting as granular as, man, this email that I sent performed really well, or this process I walked through performed really well, right? Then you can iterate on that, right? As sort of A/B test your different methods. But then back to what we were talking about goals, like it can also help you figure out like, all right, how much time do I need to spend on this? How many people if I reached out to 100 people and I was able to get 3 deals out of it, 5 deals out of it, then that's going to help you know how much time you need to invest in the next 100 people to get your next 3, 5, 10 deals, whatever it is. So tracking success rate is totally important, because otherwise everything becomes like anecdotal. Well, I tried outbound, it didn't work. I tried mailers, it didn't work, right? And it's like, okay, well, if you have data to support that, then that's one thing, right? But most people don't. Most people, take one shot and then don't ever follow up or iterate on what they were doing.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to wrap up here in a minute, but before we go, like Rescover, like that's ultimately how you guys ended up on here. It's something I signed up for. I'm using for outbound marketing for property management clients. Where'd that idea come from, and really share with the audience what Rescover is and how it kind of can benefit them in this process.
So Rescover was started by Morgan Cole. He is one of the founders, and he owned a property management company in Houston, Texas. And he is also a CCIM, which is a very specific commercial designation, which is very much rooted in the financial analytics of properties. So he understands how to analyze properties and figured that there just has to be a better way. Like that is really where Rescover was rooted in, is there just has to be a better way to analyze real estate. And so he built out this program that started as a plugin on his property management website for people to be able to analyze potential investments. And then it grew into what it is today, where there are many different products that we have where we can find people within a city who own a specific portfolio size. We can analyze a portfolio. If somebody owns 2-3 properties, we can look at what total cash on cash looks like, what IRR looks like. So it was all rooted in there has to be a better way. But at the root of it is a real estate analysis tool. Anything you would add to that, Ben?
No, I think that's right. I mean, Morgan has a long career in investing and working with investors on the management side. And, I think one of the reasons he designed the tool was to give folks a real picture of how their asset is performing, right? Because I think most investors have had the experience of, a large capital expense or a large maintenance item. And, emotionally it feels bad, right? Like, oh man, I'm losing money, or, this isn't performing the way I thought it would. And the tool really gives that full picture of, hey, yes, your cash on cash took a hit as a result of this maintenance item, but let's look at the full picture. Let's look at the appreciation. Let's look at where it's going to be 10, 15 years from now as it appreciates and as rents grow as well. So I think it's a really helpful tool for investors who are trying to analyze potential deals, but also how their existing investments are performing as well.
Yeah, so I set up Rescover so I can find the right owners for management, and so for me, I could search owners that own two or three properties, and I have DuPage County. But for this audience here today, like, you guys could literally go in, type an address, and be able to find who owns it, all the public record. It aggregates everything Tom was talking about earlier, puts it on one page. You're able to literally click a button, skip trace it. You could then send it to a spreadsheet or a CRM. You're also able to do the analysis for it and do the rental. It's got the little rental calculator. So it takes like 7 or 8 different tools that I know real estate investors are using, and kind of combines it all together. And that's the efficiency piece of it, of like why you might pay for something like this. And you guys talk about promotions or whatever, but it's something that it just makes it really easy to do the hard work, right? We're talking about the hard work earlier, and this is something that ultimately, I'll tell you this, for me, the hard work doing the outbound side of things, I got to find more people looking for property management, turn it into, wow, I could do this. I could search here, look through a few things, click this, it goes to my CRM, and I'm able to do it. So same concept for the investors out there. You could literally take a neighborhood, or you could take a city if you're in the suburbs, and just go street by street, or you could look at who, you could even filter it certain ways based on equity. It's a really cool tool for really finding deals, or finding opportunity to get deals.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I'll just add real quick. If you go to Rescover.com, you can sign up for a pro user account. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I'll make it happen on the back end. If you put in a code, let's use straight up, we'll give you a first month free. So if you put in that code, it's a $29.99 subscription, and you put that code in, we'll give you the first month for free, so you can play around and see what the system does. And I'll talk to our CTO and make sure that that's done by the time this is published.
Yeah, no, I'll put a link on the homepage that'll go to it. It'll go to, if there's maybe some, they could log in and they can download it. So yeah, for sure. Cool. Let's check it out. So it's a really cool tool. My goal is to have you guys on here really talk about the outbound piece, and making sure that everybody is really focusing on the true opportunity they have at hand versus kind of on standby waiting. And your guys' tool kind of ties it all together for helping people make that easier, helping the hard work be easier.
So just to be clear to our listeners, there's going to be a link on the site, or we got a promo code? We're throwing some things.
I'll put a link on the site with the promo code for them to go to. So all they got to do is get to straightupchicagoinvestor.com, as they do for all their other real estate needs here in Chicago. You like that?
That's good.
So we'll make it easy, and because straight up, is it a space? Is it not a space? Is it a dash? I mean,
yeah, no, we'll spell it out. We'll make it really easy. No, we really appreciate you having us on. This is a really exciting topic. Obviously, it's what Kristen and I are doing day in and day out, but we're also, it's fun to see other people reach their goals, right, and help them reach their goals. So I think what you guys are doing is great from an education standpoint, and bringing people, what they need to know to go make a lot of money, hopefully.
Yeah, we've had a lot of challenges the last 10 years, and it's always something different. And right now it's finding deals and how you're going to set yourself apart from the other guy that's just waiting for the next one to come through on Redfin. And this is outbound is the way.
Well, ready to wrap?
I am ready to wrap. So you guys can both give versions of these questions here. So what is your guys' competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this for so long? We'll just say outbound selling, while so many others wish they could. How do you guys do the hard work that other people wish they could do. There you go.
I think that I'm very clear on the end goal of where I'm trying to work towards. And if I can see that very, very clearly, then I will do what I need to do to get to the end goal. So my end goal is always very, very clear. And then the work that's needed to do just kind of falls in line because my goal means that much to me. And I make sure that it actually means something to me.
Yeah, that's really good, Kristen. I will say, back to what we were talking about before, just being genuine with people, right? Making connections with people and building trust, right? And doing it in a way that's real, right? That's not salesy, that's not coming across as inauthentic, right? I think in order to build relationships with people, you have to be genuine and you have to care about who they are and what they're doing, right? And asking good questions is a part of that I would tag on to being genuine.
Well, all right. What is one piece of advice you would tell someone that is looking to buy their first property?
Take the leap. Don't overthink it. I tend to overanalyze. Don't overanalyze. Just dive in, right? Get your feet wet. If you can think yourself in circles.
My piece of advice there would be figure out which metrics matter most to you. What are you really looking to accomplish with the property? Do we want cash flow? Are we really looking for a property that builds us equity? Are we looking for a specific IRR? Which metrics matter most to you? And filter your decisions based on your metrics and not on your emotions.
And you keep finding a way to reference that in mind. I love it. Like, that was just another way of wording it. All right. What do you guys do for fun?
This is good. Oh, go Ben. You're ready.
And I play golf really poorly. I love golf and I'm not any good, but yeah, that and chasing my two daughters around pretty much consumes all of my time.
Yes, I like to be with my family and I love games, like board games. I love board games.
What's your favorite board game?
That would be Catan. Settlers of Catan is my current favorite board game.
All right.
What is a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Well, I'd recommend you listen to the Grow Outbound podcast, presented by Rescover. I would practice, spend time in silence every day, whether it's meditation, whatever you want to call it, but spend time clearing your mind, not looking at your phone, not looking at a screen, and just, I think there's a lot to be reaped there.
I am a big reader, and so I read a lot of books. Currently, my genre that I'm going into is philosophy. So I've been reading Marcus Aurelius and Seneca specifically, and then also Ryan Holiday, who is a modern day philosopher, is what I would call him. His just series of books are some of my absolute favorite books.
All right. Besides Rescover, name another service real estate investors could utilize.
I got one. I would definitely recommend using Z Inspector for inspections. It's a really easy to use interface, whether you're having a tenant fill out an inspection or you're doing it yourself. Just very organized and easy to follow.
Yeah, I love Z Inspector. I don't believe we've ever talked about it in the show, but it's definitely a great tool.
Pass.
Pass?
Just a bit intense.
Ben with a shutdown. All right. Well, guys, thank you both so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Well, we'll put contact information in the notes if anyone wants to reach out or has questions. But yeah, I would just love to hear what is working for folks in terms of outbound, right? Like if you're employing these strategies, like what has been effective, you can shoot us an email and let us know. I get excited when clients or folks we work with reach out and say, hey, I sent this email and I got 3 responses immediately. Cool. Like, I want to see what that email is, because clearly you've got some magic right there.
And more generalized than that, any feedback or how people are able to win using our tools. So whether it's the analysis tool and people are getting in there and they're able to analyze potential deals that they're putting together, I'd love to hear how it's working out for them and how the returns are looking versus the projections that our reports are able to give.
All right. Good stuff. We'll link to all that in the show notes. Mark, you ready for Chicago Fact here?
I'm ready. So today we're going to play for 𝗤𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. She bought a t-shirt, about a year ago. So Angelina, hopefully you're still listening to the podcast. Today's Chicago Fact is brought to you by 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃, Tim Jacobs, if you're looking to appeal your taxes. And if we, myself, Kristen, or Ben get this question right, we'll send Angelina a $50 gift card brought to you by KSN, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃.
All right. Well, you guys can each choose 3 of the 4 answers. You should be all right here. So I watched the Eastern Conference Finals last night. We were recording this May 30th, so just saw the Heat beat the Celtics to move on. Made me think of basketball.
Yeah, that stinks.
The state of Illinois has the first university to play and win a 5-on-5 college basketball game. They used to play 7-on-7, even 9-on-9. But we had the first 5-on-5 basketball game, and this team from Illinois beat Iowa 15-12. And your options are the University of Illinois, University of Chicago, Loyola, or Northwestern.
Man, I feel like because you're an alumni of Illinois, like I feel like it's either A, the answer, or way too obvious. I'm not sure. I'm going to say, University of Chicago used to have a pretty crazy sports background that no one really hears about these days, but I'm going to say University of Chicago.
Okay. To our guests, what would you like to go with?
Can you repeat the answers for me really quick?
Yep. Illinois, Northwestern, Loyola, or University of Chicago.
I'm going to go with Loyola.
Sister Jean, right? I'm going to go Northwestern. I just feel like there's a lot of sports history there.
All right. Mark, University of Chicago. Nicely done.
All right. I know they used to be awesome at sports.
The football teams are unbelievable from 5 years ago.
All right, Angelina, I actually did it for you. So you get a $50 gift card brought to you by 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 with Tim Jacobs. Guys, awesome show today. Awesome feedback. It was fun to do a show that's very different. So thank you very much, Ben and Kristen. Tom, thank you as always. Listeners, you can visit straightupchicagoinvestor.com and get your tickets for the MBOA Summer Soiree. You can go on there, get your tickets. You can if you can't make it, you can donate to the group, or you can figure out the sponsorship opportunities that are out there. But on August 3rd, 5 to 9, we're at Loyola, coincidentally. Awesome grounds, awesome setup there last year, and I'm looking forward to this year. So grab your tickets there. Ben, Kristen, thank you. Tom, thank you. Listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.